I am Crucial, and today I'm going to give you a run through of the Death Knight Unholy DPS build and some of the blood tanking builds. Initially what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the talents that you choose, the glyphs, into the rotation, and explaining your cooldowns as we go along. The best thing about the Unholy build at the moment is Unholy hasn't actually been very popular until the Death Knights were released, and Frost has always been the top DPS spec, so Unholy is now taking that, and that's lovely because Unholy is my favourite spec. So we'll do the talents first. So as you can see, my tier 1 talent is Unholy Blight. I'll explain these after. Tier 2 is Anti-Magic Zone. Tier 3, Death's Advance. Tier 4, Runic Corruption. Tier 5, Death Pact. Tier 6, Gorfiend's Grasp. And Tier 7, Necrotic Plague. Now, we'll go into each one of these here, and basically I'm going to explain why I chose Unholy Blight as the tier 1 talent over Plague Leech or Plague Bearer. Firstly, Unholy Blight is just the perfect one for an AoE perspective. You don't need to worry about your runes. You can still continue the DPS once even Necrotic Plague or your Blood Plague and Frost Fever have dropped off. All you need to do is activate this here and it will stack them up. So there's a lot less worrying to do with this, plus your downtime is significantly reduced because you don't need to build up your stacks again. Activate Unholy Blight and you will gain full stacks within the 10-second period. But bar that, Unholy Blight, it doesn't use any runes. It's a 1.5 minute cooldown, so it's fantastic to use. I actually have this hotkeyed to my shift button 4, my mouse button 4, and well, my shift mouse button 4. Outbreak is to my mouse button 4. So easy to use, I don't even need to take my keys or my hands, move them. All you have to do is hit that and it will, there's no targeting involved either. It is the better choice. Plague Leech, on the other hand, it was the one I was using for a while, but found that Unholy Blight is better for the downtime. This consumes the Necrotic Plague or the Blood Plague and Frost Fever. Can't speak today. On the target to activate 2 of your randomly depleted runes, and they become death runes. So this here was actually perfect because it comboed well with the glyph, the Outbreak glyph, which means that Outbreak cost runic power instead of had a cooldown. So you could use your Outbreak or your Plague Leech because it's on 25 seconds, gain your 2 death runes, activate Outbreak for the 30 runic power, and you'd be fine. You'd still have to build up the stacks for Necrotic Plague, and it just provided too much downtime because you'd have to wait for the runic power because you're using your runic power as well on your death coil to increase your damage, and it's just not as effective. Plague Bearer is just a no-go. It's passive, which means that your death coil and your frost strike also infect your target, adding 4 seconds to the duration of your Frost Fever and Blood Boil, and adding an additional stack to Necrotic Plague. It was initially used, I think most people went for this because of the adding an additional stack to Necrotic Plague, which means that you can get the 15 stacks quicker. It's not really, it's good for keeping it up, but for consistency, Unholy Blight is better. So we'll move on to your tier 2. Lichborn is more survivability. It makes you undead for 10 seconds and increasing your leech by 10%, also making you immune to charm, fear and sleep. It's on 2 minute cooldown, so if you really need survivability, if you think you were taking a lot more damage and you want to help the healers out, this is the one to go for, but not the most effective in my eyes. Purgatory is a passive ability. Basically prevents you from sustaining fatal damage and absorbs the healing equal to the amount of damage prevented in the last 3 seconds. The one that's the tanking. Purgatory is the tanking talent for this. Anti-Magic Zone is the one I go for raiding aspects. It is perfect for helping out the raid in high damage or high spell damage, sustaining fights, and you have to be good when to use it. You can't just pop it down and assume, you know, that you're going to be fine, because it only lasts 3 seconds. So you have to use it. One of the fights that I find it's actually most useful on is if you can cover the tanks in the Blackrock Foundry raid and Crowmog. If you can fire that on the tanks during the Stone Breath, it reduces the damage by 20% of the tanks. That helps significantly. The fact is, you can use that and then activate your own anti-magic shell during the fight, absorbing the Stone Breath for yourself, helping the tanks, helping the raid, helping the healers. Also, the fact that you use an anti-magic shell means that you absorb the damage and generates runic power, which keeps your DPS up significantly. Your tier 3 talent is Death's Advance. This is... I switched in between that and Chillblains. I'll explain why, but first Asphyxiate. 30-second cooldown, long range. It's good for some things. I've never used it, so I don't actually think it's beneficial for a raid aspect, and that's what I'm getting at for this. PvP aspect, I don't know if it is even used, but basically it lifts an enemy target off the ground and crushes their throat with dark energy. They stole that from Star Wars, I swear. Stunning them for 5 seconds. It also functions as a silence, and if the target is immune to stuns. This replaces your Strangulate, so it does. So, to be honest, I prefer Strangulate. I wouldn't really. There's no need. There's no need to add that additional. We'll lift them up and we'll crush their throats, because. Anywho's, Chillblains. Victims of your frost fever are chilled, reducing their movement speed by 50% for 10 seconds, and victims of your chains of ice are immobilized for 3 seconds. Chillblains is a nice talent if you're in a high. You could switch it out even for trash in a raid. It allows you to, you know, control the trash more. It is good actually for trash, and I do switch it out occasionally for high trash fights, but Death's Advance would be the one I would go for. It's a 30-second cooldown instant ability. It means that you gain 10% movement speed passively, and movement impairing effects are not reduced, or don't reduce you below 70% of the normal movement speed. It activates and gains 30% movement speed, and you cannot be slowed below 100% of your normal movement speed for 6 seconds. This helps in so many fights when you need to get out of the shit in the floor, the fire, you know, there's bombs coming down. Any fight that requires you to move significantly, Death's Advance is great for. I use this on my tanking spec and my blood spec for the last boss of High Maw, and the way it works is whenever you're on a blood, whenever you're a tank in that fight, you gain a debuff which you have to move 30 yards away from the raid. Now this at the beginning just goes on you and you run away, but as the fight progresses you get teleported to a certain place in the room, and then you have to move 30 yards away. So Death's Advance is great for that, because I activate Death's Advance, I'm far faster, I can get out before the time period, and I don't wipe the raid. It's great for DPS as well, to the fact that you just don't have to worry about standing in the fire. You activate this, you run. It's on a 30-second cooldown. Most, like, it is used the most in my rating. Your tier 4 talents, your Blood Tap, your Runic Empowerment, and your Runic Corruption. Blood Tap initially was the one I was going for this. It is absolutely fantastic. I love it. It requires a lot of skill to use, in my opinion, and it is very, very good. But the downside to it is you have to be you have to be on key, you have to be ready, and you have to be aware. Basically every 15 runic power you spend will generate blood charges, max of 12 charges. You then consume 5 of the blood charges to activate a randomly depleted rune as a death rune. Now this is fantastic. It means that you're never on downtime. You can activate this here to increase the to give you a fully depleted rune as a death rune, and you can continue your DPS. It does stop whenever you're in a bit of a fight and you haven't gained your runic power and your runes are on cooldown. It shouldn't happen, but it does. So it is the second choice I would go for, but not the first. Runic empowerment is a no-go for me. Basically, every time you spend runic power, you have a 1.5% chance per runic power spent to activate a randomly fully depleted rune. It sounds good, but it isn't. The fact of it is that whenever you use your death coil, that's 30 runic power. So for each runic power you spent, you have a 1.5% chance. I think it works out at 49% chance to activate a randomly depleted rune. So the way it works is this rune is activated as its own rune. You don't gain it as a death rune, which would make it actually useful. It's just a rune. So in other words, it could be a frost rune, it could be an unholy rune, or it could be a blood rune. It could be any of the three. You don't get to choose. There's no consistency. It isn't the one that I go for. Runic corruption is the one I chose, and it does keep you up on your DPS. You've no downtime, very little downtime with this. It is a little bit of RNG based, but it works. When you spend runic power, you have a 1.5% chance per runic power spent again, so it's around 49%, to increase your rune regeneration rate by 100% for 3 seconds. This basically activates all your runes to have a 100% regeneration rate. If you gain the crit on this, so if you gain the 49% every death coil you use, you then have the chance of refreshing any unused cooldown or any unused rune. And your death coil is part of the rotation, so you're constantly up on it. It's constantly being used. It is the one to go for. I found that, plus you don't really need to think about it, so you can worry more about the fight, worry more about your anti-magic zones. It is the one to go for. So moving on to your tier 5 talent: Death Pact, Death Siphon, and Conversion. Conversion is, I don't know why somebody would use this. I just don't. It uses your runic power, which means it would probably regenerate your runes with runic corruption. It restores 2% of your maximum health per 1 second, lasts until cancelled or out of runic power. It's just not beneficial compared to the other two. I don't see it. Death Siphon. It uses one of your death runes. It deals an initial 3,901 Shadow Frost damage to the enemy, healing the Death Knight for 400% of the damage dealt. Obviously you can crit on that and multiple effects come into play. It is the one some people are going for, and I can see why, but I wouldn't like to use my death rune for the occasional chance to heal. It doesn't seem beneficial enough to me, because the DPS difference in death rune to Scourge Strike is nearly 3,000 of a difference, 4,000 of a difference, and I'd rather use Scourge Strike with my death rune instead of Death Siphon. Most fights don't even require you to heal that much, because the healers are good, so you don't really need to keep using Death Siphon to keep yourself up. Most of the ones I go for are Death Pact. It is the perfect one. It has saved me on so many occasions. It is an instant 2-minute cooldown, and it heals the Death Knight for 50% of the max health and absorbs incoming healing equal to 25% of the max health for 15 seconds. Don't worry about the last bit. It never comes into play, because in a fight you get hit with something by accident. You know, sometimes it happens. You're down to 10% health. You see that, you go, oh shit. You activate Death Pact. You're now you're now about 60% health. You're fine, because you don't constantly get hit with this. It was a one-off. The healers see you at 10% and they fire heals at you. So that 25%, that absorbing for 25% of your max health, is instantly disappeared within the 5 seconds, normally 10 seconds. You use Death Pact. The healers know in my raid that I use Death Pact, so whenever I get hit for something really hard, they know they don't have to worry straight away, but they heal me. Death Pact heals me 60%. I keep living, I keep DPSing. It is the way forward in my opinion, because you don't need to use Death Siphon that much. I used it for a while, didn't really find it useful. Alright, so your tier 6 talent is Gore Fiend's Grasp, Remorseless Winter, and Desecrated Ground. Desecrated Ground is a PvP one in my opinion. It corrupts the ground in an 8-yard radius beneath the Death Knight for 10 seconds. While standing in this corruption, the Death Knight is immune to roots, snares, and effects that cause loss of control. This ability instantly removes such effects when activated. I don't find that good in raiding. It's an odd one. I wouldn't use it. I don't know why people would use it. Normally you have shamans in raid. The Tremor Totem does something similar, but no, not the one for me. Remorseless Winter is one I keep going back and forward between Gorfine's Grasp and this. These are the two you want, and I mean you have to. They're perfect in every different scenario. So always keep Tombs of Clear Mind on call. Remorseless Winter is a 1-minute cooldown. Surrounds the Death Knight with a swirling tempest of frigid air for 8 seconds, chilling enemies within 8 yards every 1 second. Each pulse reduces target's movement speed by 15% for 3 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Upon receiving the 5th application of the stack, the enemy or enemies will be stunned for 6 seconds. Perfect for trash, perfect for big pools. There is multiple fights. One of the ones we're doing at the moment, Operator Thormog in Blackrock Foundry, is there's 2 of us. There's another Unholy DK. I use Gorfine's Grasp and he uses Remorseless Winter. If anybody's done the fight, you know that whenever the trains come and the ads come out, DKs with Gorfine's Grasp are loved because it pulls in all the ads into the centre and AoE them down. With the other DK using Remorseless Winter, all he has to do is, as soon as I Gorfine's Grasp them in Remorseless Winter, the ads are stunned for 6 seconds. It is a perfect combination and we have got it down to a T. The raid is loving it right now. Gorfine's Grasp is the one I choose, and I've just explained really why. I switch back and forward if there isn't another DK, but Gorfine's Grasp is my one because our other DK has Remorseless Winter. Basically, shadowy tendrils coil around all enemies within 20 yards of the target, hostile or friendly, pulling them to the target's location. It is beautiful. It's 1 minute cooldown as well. I think Remorseless Winter's one. It is. So they combo perfectly. It's beautiful. I wish I could show it. I really do. And your tier 7 is Necrotic Plague, Defile, and Breath of Sindragosa. Now, Breath of Sindragosa is another one that I had to test recently, but I don't feel it does as much damage. Even though it was buffed slightly, it just doesn't feel like you're doing enough damage. Every 15 runic power spent is the cost for it. It's a 2-minute cooldown and it constantly deals 6,481 Shadow Frost damage every 1 second to the enemies in a cone in front of you within 12 yards. Deals reduced damage to secondary targets, and you will continue breathing it until it's cancelled or the runic power is exhausted. It is good. It is used. And I personally just don't think it is the one I would go for. Some people may choose it, but I didn't find it significantly useful. The uptime, the cooldown is 2 minutes. It's just very, very hard to use this, maintain your runes, and even though it does refresh it with runic corruption, it's just seems too complicated to push it into a rotation that's already not complicated, but maintained perfectly, that if you fire this in, it will mess it up. It's firing a spanner in the works. Defile is the one I've been choosing. I go back and forth between Defile and Necrotic Plague. Defile is the one I use on my blood because it's for the blood version of this. It actually reduces all damage for the blood DK by 10%, and it is lovely. It's on a 30-second cooldown. Any high sustaining fights. One of the ones I used to use it for in the combos was Cromog, the first boss on High Maul. Whenever he did his spiky move, I can't remember the name of it, his spiky move where he held the tank up and he dealt consistent damage for, I think it was about 10 seconds. The first initial time, it doesn't really hurt, but because the second time it stacks, it actually started to hurt, especially on Heroic and going into Mythic, it really did hurt. What you do is if you pop the file on the ground just before he does it, that reduces the damage done by 10%, and yes, it does work for his move. If you activate the file and then go in and activate your Icebound Fortitude, it will reduce all damage taken by 30%. Simple. It is beautifully connected. It just helps the healing out. But for this one, for Unholy, I don't really see the benefit in my eyes for using the file. It's not as effective as Necrotic Plague in the DPS side. They're close, but Necrotic Plague takes it. So the one I go for is Necrotic Plague. It's a passive. It replaces your Blood Plague and your Frost Fever, and it basically activates a powerful disease that deals 334 Shadow Frost damage per stack every 2 seconds for 30 seconds. Each time it deals damage against 1 stack and infects another nearby enemy within 8 yards. So it spreads. It's beautiful. It continues to increase in damage. You can constantly refresh it with Festering Strike. It does replace the other ones, but once the difference is whenever this here diminishes, once it goes, it is hard. Like it is hard to build it back up. But that's where Unholy Blight comes in, and Death Coil. Well, that is the talents that I choose for Unholy. They're quite similar to my blood talents. I've changed them about slightly, but the blood version is Plague Leech over Unholy Blight because I don't need to worry about it. Plague Leech allows me to activate Death Strike if by chance I'm having a bit of downtime. Activate Plague Leech, activate Outbreak, bash with Death Strike, get some heals back, get some health back. Purgatory is the one I use. I've explained it why. It keeps me alive. It is the tanking one. If you don't use it, you're an idiot. Death's Advance, same again. Runic Corruption, same again. Death Pact, if you don't use it for tanking, you're an idiot. Remorseless Winter, I move back and forward between those two again, and the file is the exact same. If I activate this, it will tell me that, I'm pretty sure it will tell me that it reduces the damage to the Death Knight by 10%. Just gonna make sure here. Enemies standing in the file deal 10% less damage to me, only me, not anybody else. Oh, it's actually 60% of the damage because Icebound Fortitude now goes up to 50%, reduces the damage by 50% in blood spec. But yes, that is the blood version of it. It's quick, simple. Because I'm talking about Unholy, I don't really want to get into blood, but there you go. The glyphs I use, I would change some of these about, but I can't be bothered. There's no real big glyphs that are that really help yourself, you know. Icebound Fortitude glyph I use because it reduces the cooldown of Icebound Fortitude by 50%, which means I can use it more often and quickly. Like I don't really need to use it for long periods of time because I'm not the tank. But whenever big blasts of damage I can see are going to come out, Icebound Fortitude is perfect. It helps me, it helps the healers, everybody wins. Glyph of Blood Boil is great for AoE because it increases the range of Blood Boil by 5 yards. It helps. It is slightly increased, but normally all the mobs are pulled. But if they're not, then it will help. Glyph of Regenerative Magic. If Anti-Magic Shell expires after its full duration, the cooldown is reduced by 50% based on the amount of damage absorbed remaining. This is beautiful because, all in all, Anti-Magic Shell, for all the damage absorbed, gives you runic power. It also means that if by chance there's not that much damage absorbed, my throat is so sore. If by chance the full damage isn't absorbed, this here glyph allows the cooldown to be reduced, which means you can just use it more often. It's lovely. Glyph of Resilient Grip. When your Death Grip ability fails because its target is immune, it's reset. I use this with the other tanks because some mobs run away, some mobs are ranged, and sometimes we don't have a DK tank, sometimes we don't have tanks. I can just pull this into a mob, into the group, and it doesn't bother the other tanks. It also means that whenever I pull it in, it combos with the Glyph of Tranquil Grip, which means I don't taunt. It just pulls it in. The other tanks can pick it up. There's no bother. And Glyph of Army of the Dead. If you use Army of the Dead in a raid, and if you use it consistently, this is the glyph you need, because it stops your Army of the Dead from taunting. If you don't, I hate you, because I've seen DKs whenever I'm tanking use on Army of the Dead, and it keeps taunting. I hate it. Well, those are the glyphs. Not going to get into the blood glyphs, but in detail, but I'll give you a run through. It's Glyph of Vampiric Blood, Glyph of Outbreak, Glyph of Regenerative Magic, Glyph of Army of the Dead. Even the tank uses this. He wants to keep aggro, not his army. Glyph of Resilient Grip, and Glyph of Path of Frost. I actually need to put that in, I love that. Those are the glyphs, those are the talents. That is Unholy, and I'll give you a quick rotation. I'm not going to go full into the rotation because I don't want the video to go on for too long, but I'll give you a quick gist of it. Initially, in a raid aspect, you always make sure you have one of your strength flasks on, either or, the lower one or the greater. Always make sure it's on. Increases the damage. It does actually help, even though people think, you know, it's just a flask. It isn't. It helps. You're going to be an Unholy Presence. Increases your movement speed and increases your haste by 20%. The movement speed is only by 15% actually. From that, you're going to open up with an Outbreak. You're going to go into Scourge Strike, and this is the way it does go. I do open up with Outbreak. I do open up with Scourge Strike, into Festering, back to Scourge, and into Festering. I try not to keep them too close to each other, as in to go Scourge Strike, Scourge Strike, Festering Strike, Festering Strike. I open up with Scourge Strike, into Festering Strike, into Scourge Strike, into Festering Strike. Once that's all finished, you blast through your death coils, and that there then means that Dark Transformation gets stacks. Had a bit of a mind collapse there. Initially, what you do to start off the fight is pop your potion of Drenic, or your Drenic Strength Potion. Increase your strength by 1000 for 25 seconds. It helps. What you do is you activate this first, because I'm an idiot and I don't raid. You activate this. You then blast through your runes. Once your runes are depleted, you blast through your Death Coil, your Runic Power. That will activate Runic Corruption, meaning your runes will regenerate. It will give your Dark Transformation stacks. As soon as that hits 5 stacks, you can transform your ghoul into a powerful undead monstrosity for 30 seconds. Where did my ghoul go? Come on, there we go. So what you do is you blast that. Once you blast your Death Coils, Runic Corruption should activate. You should have runes you can activate, and you continue your DPS. Once you finish your Death Coil spam, or before it, if possible, pop your gargoyle, because having that potion up with 1000 strength actually does affect the damage that your gargoyle does. So if you don't pop that and you just pop your gargoyle, it will not do as much damage as if I pop this and then the gargoyle. It just won't. I've tested it, it does not. So once that there happens, that's finished. You've used your potion. Some fights require you to use the potion later on. That's why I forgot, because we've been wiping on maidens, and maidens I used the potion at the last 20%, because that's when heroism is popped, and it's a bigger blast of damage then. It's also where the fight actually gets intense, that you need to start doing proper damage. The rest of the fight you just need to sort of keep alive. So that's why I forgot that. So that is the simple rotation. Use Scourge Strike, Festering Strike. Make sure that your Necrotic Plague is constantly up. If it drops off, use Unholy Blight. It will refresh it. Use your Death Coils. That will activate Dark Transformation. Make sure you keep Dark Transformation up constantly. Army of the Dead. Use it at the start of the fight. In long 10-minute fights, you can use Army of the Dead twice. Maidens is the perfect example for that. That fight is 12 to 14 minutes long, and if you wipe in the last, you just hate yourself. It is actually perfect if you don't have the talent for the taunt at the last. Like, if you can expect your tanks are going to die, if you didn't have the talent there, Army of the Dead would actually help, but it's not worth it in my opinion, because at the start of the fight you use Army of the Dead, so your tanks will hate you. So you keep up Scourge Strike, Festering Strike, and Death Coil. Firing down Death and Decay every time it's available. It just keeps up your damage. It's not the one to jump for, but I would try and keep it up as much as possible. And when the target is below 45, or is at 45 and below % health, constantly keep Soul Reaper up. It does the most damage. Keep it up. There's times in fights that I've just switched between Festering Strike, Soul Reaper, Death Coil, Festering Strike, Soul Reaper, Death Coil, and completely forgot about Scourge Strike. Festering Strike keeps up your Necrotic Plague, keeps it refreshed, which means that, and then Scourge Strike when available if I can, below 45% health. You want to just make sure this is constantly on the target. It is the best move you have. Remembering to use Gargoyle every 3 minutes as well, because it will keep up your damage. And I've lost track of what I'm doing. Right, so that's a simple rotation. It's not in depth, but it will help anybody starting out to know that what you have to do is open up with your Outbreak, your Scourge Strike, your Festering Strike, whatever rotation you want to do for this. I like to switch it. And then Death Coil spam along with your potion. You need the potion. It boosts your damage significantly. I can't stress this. You also need your Flask. And then you pop your Gargoyle. Your Dark Transformation must stay up at all times as well. You know, it's hard to do it, but once you start getting into rotation, you'll be able to do it off the bat. Anytime Necrotic Plague falls off, you're going to use Unholy Blight. I find that once Heroism is popped, the fights went on, I'm quite low on runes, runic power, anything. You pop Empowered Rune Weapon, it immediately activates all your runes and generates 25 runic power, which means as soon as Heroism pop, I know I can pop this and I'm ready to blast out all the damage. Pop that, go into your full rotation again, keep Dark Transformation up, and that's about it from that. There's a few other spells that should be used in the raid as well. I find there's your Death Pact has to be used. Always keep Icebound Fortitude and Anti-Magic Shell on call because they help. Also make sure Horn of Winter. Don't know why I'm saying it because everybody should know this, but if you don't have Horn of Winter activated, activate it. Some of the add-ons I use for raiding actually help me out as well. As you can see, like the bars here. This is called Magic Runes. It's an add-on. It allows me to see which runes I use and when they're on cooldown, as you can see here. So I can just keep up on everything with seeing this right beside it. I use Grid as well. It allows me to see the raid, see everybody in the raid, see when they're dead, see whenever they need the cooldown of Raid's ally to help bring the dead person back to life, back to the raid. Some of the other ones I use just to move, I use X Pearl, Unit Frames, and I really should get an add-on to get rid of all these around my map because it really does annoy me, but not necessity. Bygone is nothing to do with the raid, but I'm just explaining it because I love it. And I use Titan Panel. It allows me to see some of my gold, my bag space, and my durability, my location, and my experience, which shouldn't even be there because I'm max level. Right, well, that is all I have to say. That is all I know about Death Knight Unholy. Well, not all I know, but most of it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you love my my transmog set. I like it. Love the paladin shoulders from Lich King. It's beautiful. So hopefully you check back with me again for some more guides on other heroes or other classes from World of Warcraft. Thank you very much.